In this video, we'll look at how bubble charts work, how to create them, and how to modify them. Before we get into creating a bubble chart, it's worth knowing a bit about the logic behind it. As you can see on the axes, this chart looks at debt to GDP and the deficit or surplus to GDP for a selection of European countries. Needless to say, these series take care of where the bubbles are located on the grid. So, what about the size of the bubbles? In this chart, the size of each bubble is defined by a third series, GDP, and displayed relative to the other countries. To achieve that, we used the partition into three series setting in scalar analysis. So, just to recap, the size of the bubbles is dependent on one series, while the location of the bubbles is dependent on another. For example, time charts and category charts require two series. Scatter charts and category scatter charts, as in the example, require three. Now, sticking to our example, let's take a step-by-step look at how we created this bubble chart. Once you have your data in place and have applied the necessary calculations, the next step is to add a category scatter chart, because the scalar analysis produces category series. To change the presentation of the data to a bubble chart, go to Graph Layout. You can access it by right-clicking on the chart. What we want to do in this window is organize our series so that they're applied to the correct axes. First, change the type of chart to bubble, here. Drag any series that are presented as a line graph to the bubble graph and delete the line graph. As usual with scatter charts, the first series in the list is applied to the x-axis and the second to the y-axis. The third series will be used to define the size of the bubbles. To adjust the size of the bubbles, click on one of them. You'll find the size settings under the Presentation Properties tab, here. The value is given in pixels. This number will set the size of the biggest bubble. All others will be adjusted proportionally. By default, bubbles with negative values are not visualized. Simply mark the checkbox to include them. When negative bubbles are visualized, the size of the bubble is defined by the absolute value of the series. For more tutorials on using different chart styles, have a look at the other materials provided in this section.